Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Hovercast Roundtable, your place for quality TCG content for all ages. I'm Brit. I'm here as your host once again, and as always, we've got Eric and Travis with us this week. I couldn't make it last week, and we had a guest, and I think it went pretty well as far as the discussion is concerned. But for the most part, all three of us are going to try to be here for the content. As much as we possibly can. But looking forward to today's topics, obviously the hot topic, the big point of discussion right now is the Melbourne International Championship that just went down over the weekend. We saw John Kettler's deck that sort of like has slowly, crept its way into being the most popular deck in the format. We saw him with like a decent performance at the California Regionals in Standard a couple weekends ago, and then he ended up in Expanded taking second place with it in St. Louis. And then this past weekend, I don't even know the numbers. I want to say it was like close to 12 or so. 12 of the top 32 slots in day two were just all well-known players piloting this deck. So I guess to start discussion today, let's just go ahead and look at the results from Melbourne first. So I guess, obviously, we've talked about Owl Plume, however you want to call it, Decidueye Vile Plume, but it didn't end up winning the tournament. Two Volcanians snuck into the top 8, and one of them was able to take it all the way down. So let's go ahead and start with Eric. What do you want to talk about? Give us the rundown of your thoughts on the results we saw over the weekend.
So, yeah, Decidueye Vile Plume clearly, I think, made itself known as the best deck in Standard and probably Expanded too right now. Maybe Laurentis is better, but we'll talk about Expanded another week. But yeah, Decidueye Vile Plume is really, really strong because there just aren't a lot of options in Standard for players to deal with item block on turn 1. Vile Plume is incredibly strong. Revitalizer makes it so basically you're guaranteed to get a turn 1 Vile Plume with a couple Decidueye, or maybe not a couple, but at least one Decidueye is pretty common. It's a really quick deck to get out stage 2s when they really shouldn't be able to get them out so early. And I think it's just really, really oppressive. I think you're going to see a lot of people start playing Wobbuffet as to counter it, because Wobbuffet's really the only card that shuts down the entire deck. So Decidueye definitely made itself known as the best deck. One deck that I really want to highlight is Takuya Yoneda's Decidueye tech deck, because that deck actually, I think, was built specifically to counter Decidueye Vile Plume, because he didn't play Vile Plume and he could function really well under item lock. I thought his deck was really, really interesting and really innovative, so I just wanted to give him a shout out. I think that deck is really cool too, and if you think Decidueye Vile Plume is going to be really popular in your meta, that's something that I think you should test a lot. So that's my initial thoughts. I guess Volcanion as well. I've never liked Volcanion as a deck. I think it's really bad. I think it's really boring and basic to play. I don't really think it offers very much, but it really just feasted on this meta of just grass types. And yeah, that's why I think he was able to win. I don't think it's a fantastic deck, but it was a great meta call. So props to, I think it was Pedro that won, so props to him for making a fantastic read on the meta.
Yeah, for sure. Travis, do you have anything else you'd like to add, or any new observations you want to bring to the table?
No, not really. I mean, I think that obviously, a lot of people that went to the Melbourne International figured out that the Plumel deck was insanely good. I was a little surprised. I kind of thought, I guess it's not too surprising because there wasn't much time between St. Louis and Melbourne, but I thought the people the meta would shift more against that deck than it ended up doing. I mean, sure, it didn't win, but kind of like you guys said, it took up a third of day 2, which is clearly insane. I'm sure there were multiple mirror matches going on every round because of that. And it didn't win the event, so people have already kind of figured out how to beat it. But I think that it's definitely going to be the focal point of both the Standard and Expanded metas moving forward.
I guess the next question to think about while we're still on the topic of Decidueye Vile Plume is that are there its results from Australia the case of it just being the real deal? Is it the best deck, or was it almost just it didn't even win, like we've said? So what were its results almost, an instance of overpopulation? Did it just put up such good results because so many people played it. How many people played it that didn't make day two, for instance? That would be a statistic that I'm curious about. So yeah, that's my question. Is this deck the best deck in the format? Is it a one-hit wonder? Is it kind of just like done its thing and going to fade into the foreground of the meta, like like Evital Garb did more or less earlier, I guess late in 2016. So I'll start with Travis this time. Travis, what's your take on that?
So I do know that there were some other people that played it that didn't do as well. I was talking to Drew Kennett after Australia, or even while he was there, and he's like, I played the exact same deck that Alex did, like the same 60, and he said that he just like didn't get enough turn one Vileplumes and just like kind of got beat by everything else, like Turbo Dark and decks like Volcanion, that if you give them too many turns without items, they can kind of just set up and trade with you anyway. I know. I think Sam Huff played that deck as well. I'm not sure. Did he day two? I don't think he did.
I don't think so. No.
So I mean, I definitely think that could, what Brit said could be correct. Like, because it seemed like it was a pretty popular deck. So it could have just been like, ooh, look at this new deck hype, and so everybody kind of fell onto it because it was cool and shiny and new. So, I don't know. I mean, Evil Carb kind of got countered so hard of the format because it was so dominant, right? So this deck could end up being the case, after seeing the results of Melbourne, players might, everywhere be like, oh, I have to beat this deck moving forward. And so it could immediately just like force it right out of the format as quickly as it came in.
Mm-hmm. I'll go next, I guess, just to try to diversify the order in which we talk. I don't think the deck is very good. That's my pretty hot take on this subject. I think that it was a case of striking fire at the right time. It was in the right place at the right time. But I think that the first time it popped up, Kettler was the only one playing the deck, and more or less, even in Expanded, the very next regionals, John Kettler from I think he's in Houston now, but just a Texas player. He was more or less the only person playing it again that tournament. And so obviously it's good when people aren't prepared for it, but especially in Standard, I think it's a lot weaker without the Battle Compressor Revitalizer engine. I think that deck, that combination of cards, rather, is something that can really set it apart, and is just such a boon for Vileplume decks in general. But yeah, I've been playing with it a little bit online since Australia, and I have lousy games maybe a third of the time, if not 40% of the time. I just you can't play, your supporters are limited because you don't have Versus Seeker. You play 4 Sycamore 4N and stuff like that, and so I think it's easier to brick yourself. Sometimes you go all in trying to find that turn one Vileplume, and you just end up with a bench of Gloom, Double Shaman, Rowlet with a Dartrix active or something, and then I've passed the rest of the game. I lost to some pretty bad decks on PTCGO when I was streaming Sunday night, I guess. Just that very instance, did not find the turn one Vileplume and got run over by tier 3 combinations. And so yeah, looking forward, I think that if people are ready for it, it'll definitely perform much worse. How people prepare for it is, that's a separate topic, but I would be shocked to see it dominate a tournament with that kind of force again. Looking forward. Eric, do you have anything else to say?
I would agree with you. I don't think it's going to absolutely dominate a tournament like it did Australia, where, I think Australia was a combination of the deck just being incredibly strong, and all of the best players that traveled basically played that deck. I think a lot of the Europeans didn't end up playing that deck. I think only Maze was I think Maze was the only European that did well that played it. I could be wrong, but a lot of them I think favored Darkrai. But a lot of the good players that traveled played that deck, which I think helped its results. But I do think the deck is incredibly strong. Like I said earlier, I don't think Standard really has a lot of options available to just deal with the Vileplume deck. Vileplume is just really incredibly oppressive in Standard just because the card pool is so much smaller than in Expanded. But, we already have seen some decks that are just built to counter Decidueye Vileplume. Like Russell Lepar of someone's PC built an Espeon Wobbuffet deck that literally is just built to beat Decidueye Vileplume. And I think Isaiah Rufus, I don't know if he used Russell's list, but he won an ARG circuit series over this past weekend with it as well. So, we've already seen people building decks just to beat Vileplume, but I think even with that, Vileplume's still going to do really well, but I think that is the direction the format's heading. Kind of like with Yveltal, like you were saying, in December, but I think Yveltal was just a better deck built to handle all like the hate, because Yveltal is just so strong. While this deck, if people start just teching exclusively for it, I don't know if it'll be able to stand up to that, but I do think Decidueye Vileplume is an incredibly strong deck, and I don't think the results were super fluky, but I don't think it'll happen again in that sort of numbers.
Yeah, that's good. I guess just to sort of close out our discussion of Decidueye in general, I think we touched on Takuya's deck, and I think he should have won the tournament for sure. His deck was super favored against the mirror. I know, Mace played him in Swiss and said he lost like pretty convincingly, and that it was definitely unfavorable for the Vileplume player. There's just like a lot of tricks that he had, but unfortunately he got a Volcanion immediately, and Vileplume can maybe steal a game or two off Volcanion, but without Vileplume you're just gonna get like blown up. I think there's a lot of stuff. I know we want to talk about some Wobbuffet decks here in a second, so I'll save that discussion for you guys. But something I had thought about as like a soft counter just to Decidueye is the promo Shaman. Like that seems pretty good to me in a lot of decks. If you have something that they can't really, like, say you have a Tauros in the active. So Tauros is not a card that they're going to try to stack damage on because it'll just, like, kill you. So in the mirror a lot, for instance, you're just, like, pounding away at Shamans or Owls and stuff like that. But with this Shaman card, you can mitigate the spread every turn. I don't know. It seems good to me. I just, like, actually looked at, the card is sitting on my desk right now, and I was like, it's like it could be okay as a tech against Decidueye, but let's go ahead and move on from that. Wobbuffet decks, I guess. Yeah, that'll be the next thing to talk about. I don't know a whole lot about what's going on with this Espeon Wobbuffet deck. I understand. I knew that it existed, like talking to you guys in this past 20 minutes or so. I had already heard of it before that, but I don't really understand how it works. Will one of you, I guess, let's start with Travis, like explain to me why that's a deck I just don't understand?
So, like, it's definitely, I haven't seen, like, someone's PC list, but, like, I assume it's just, like, a 4/4 Espeon with, like, a handful of Wobbuffets and, like, Shaman, right? Like, it doesn't, I don't really know where else, like, I don't know what the support account looks like, I don't know what kind of items they play, but actually, at Anaheim Regionals, I did play against an Espeon Wobbuffet deck with Mega Mewtwo, and I beat it, like, very easily. I think a big problem with these, like, GX-focused decks is they don't have access to any sort of, like, reasonable form of energy acceleration.
Yeah,
so, like,
that's exactly what I said earlier about that matchup. Someone was talking about Espeon Wobbuffet, and I was just like, I think Mega Mewtwo can still beat it because they have Energy Excel.
I 2-0'd him very convincingly because I just, like...
Espeon's stuck on manual attach, and, I forget that Psychic Infinity doesn't apply weakness, but still, hitting 200 isn't hard when they're going to have 3 energy on them.
Yeah, exactly. So, I don't know. I think it's, like, exclusively a Decidueye counter. I don't think the deck's that good. I don't know. I think if I can 2-0 with Mega Mewtwo and feel very fine, then I don't know. Then it's not overall that strong. Like, I think Mega Mewtwo with just, like, a Wobbuffet or two, similar to what Igor won a League Cup with this past weekend, is, like, the direction Mewtwo goes in, or like like I think that's looking at how you adapt current decks to beat it instead of trying to invent a whole new deck just to beat this one deck, right?
I 100% agree. So the Espeon, I haven't looked at the list either, but I don't think I'm wrong when I'm saying this, but I'm pretty sure they played like Jolteon, Flareon, etc. as well with the EVs. Right. And I know they also Russell played Bursting Balloon in his list, so that's like a way to like get some damage on the field. But I don't see how the deck really functions outside of a Decidueye counter without Dimension Valley, because that's your energy acceleration, especially in standard. In expanded for Psychic decks. Espeon and Wobbuffet, it's a really good combination, especially with Bursting Balloons. Wobbuffet's a really good attacker. But yeah, I don't know if it's going to be able to keep up with a lot of different decks besides for Decidueye Vileplume. I think it's a fantastic counter to Decidueye Vileplume, and in meta full of Decidueye Vileplume, I would 100% play that deck. But if I knew I was, if I wasn't going to play that deck every single round, or 60% of my tournament, I'm not sure I would consider it as a viable play. I do think the deck is a legit deck, but I think... Yeah, I don't think it'll be able to keep up without energy acceleration. I agree with you guys. I think that's a huge issue with the deck.
Okay, cool. Is there any other new standard decks you guys had been thinking about or wanted to bring up? I don't know. I don't see a lot of these smaller tournament results without being active in the Facebook groups or whatever. So I didn't know that people had won with this deck. Are there any other weird things that have popped up over the weekend to sort of capitalize on a Decidueye filled metagame?
Not really, but like Travis said, Igor won a League Cup with Mega Mewtwo Wobbuffet, and I have a friend from New York City, Tristan Masick, who made top 8 at a Cities with it, or League Cup now with it. I don't know how many Wobbuffet they play, but I think you probably just cut the Espeon line from Mewtwo and just play 2 Wobbuffet. And that's just your way to deal with the Decidueye Vileplume. And besides that, Mega Mewtwo is still really good. You're probably not going to play Mega Mewtwo a lot in the mirror match, so I don't think you really need Espeon right now until Mega Mewtwo becomes really strong again. I actually know Sam Chen played it in Australia and got top 64 with it and earned his invite, so congrats to you, Sam. I don't know how many Wobbuffet he played, but he said, I was talking to him and Tristan, because I haven't played Mega Mewtwo with Wobbuffet yet, because, it just happened this weekend. I was away this weekend, haven't been able to test. But they both said that it's incredibly favored against Decidueye because of Wobbuffet, and Mewtwo just hits so hard, so fast, they can't really keep up with it. So I think that I don't think there's a new archetype aside for the Espeon Wob deck that's really coming out to beat Decidueye, but I think some decks like Mega Mewtwo are just going to be able to tech a couple cards in and be able to deal with it, at least, if not all the time, a good majority of the time.
Okay, that sounds about right. I don't know. I think that's about it for this episode. Is there any other topics you think we've missed?
Volcanion.
Volcanion. Mention what we'll be discussing in future weeks before we close it out here.
I think something to even at Australia, we kind of saw people countering Owlplume, right? Because they saw it was going to be huge. I know the Lesage brothers played a Wobbuffet in their Turbo Dark exclusively to promote it with a Floatstone and play a bunch of items and then retreat back to a Darkrai, and apparently it was good.
Yeah, that sounds fine. Maybe just considering Wobbuffet in your deck is something for anyone looking to play Standard this weekend.
Yeah, it's just funny seeing Wobbuffet thrown into decks that it clearly doesn't belong in just to counter this.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about Volcanion. I completely dismissed it, but I think we should talk about it a little bit more and not just completely throw it aside.
Yeah, sure. It did win the tournament.
Yeah, you've been playing it a lot, Brit. Do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, I was going to say I'll start because I like Volcanion a lot. I know when we were talking about the San Jose or the Anaheim regionals, I can't remember which one was the Sun and Moon Standard.
Anaheim,
I remember I think it was our first or second episode, I said I would have played Volcanion for that weekend. And that's sort of, even though the metagame is shifting, I find myself back on Volcanion. I have some Standard League Cups this weekend that I'm hoping to be able to attend. Things happen, so it might not always work out. But I think for the one on Saturday, I'm definitely going to play Volcanion. It just feels really strong to me. I think the only matchup that I'm just not favored against is Mega Mewtwo. And that can be a close matchup depending on the openings. And based on the metagame I experienced last time I was in this area, it was about 3 hours away down in Oklahoma. There wasn't anyone playing Mewtwo. The only person playing Mewtwo was my friend who I gave the Mewtwo deck to. So, but I just think it's good. I think, I expect the metagame to be a little slower in this area just based on how I've experienced these players, which isn't a knock on them necessarily, but just sort of my understanding to the way they favor decks is I expect the best player to be playing card for card like Keon's Decidueye Vileplume or something like that. He just sort of plays the best deck without much hesitation, quote unquote. So I want to be able to beat those players, and I think my matchup against Speed Dark is really good. I haven't tested against Giratina at all. I would assume that matchup's roughly the same. But the only way that Speed Dart beats Volcanion ever is if they just stick a Silent Lab, and I'm playing 3 stadiums in my build right now to try to win the stadium war. And usually I think those decks play 2 Silent Lab, 1 Parallel City, usually something like that. But otherwise you just sort of trade attacks, but you do a lot more damage if you have access to Steam Up. But then, like, I don't know, decks like Gardevoir are really good still, and that matchup's pretty easy for Volcanion. It's not hard to just do 210 while they're having to 2-shot you and stuff. But yeah, not a whole lot has changed about Volcanion. It's remained somewhat stagnant as far as how the list looks. Like, I'm testing the Tauros package in my deck right now, but I'm pretty sure it's bad. Unfortunately, I would like it to be very good. But just 1 Tauros, 1 Ninja Boy, like we said in a previous episode, it's just kind of like good to have access to the GX attack like an ace spec. But I'll probably end up dedicating the spots to something else. I think Mega Rayquaza also is an interesting play right now. I don't own the cards for it, so that's why I'm not considering it. But if I did, I think that would be a really safe play for this weekend as well.
Do you think Mega Rayquaza... I haven't tested Mega Rayquaza either because I don't own the cards. I also don't think it's a very good deck, but do you think Mega Rayquaza has a strong matchup against Decidueye Vileplume? Because that's something that I think you have to beat going forward, and I'm not sure, even with the 2 or 3
it's just a coin flip. I think it's... If you go first and Hex, you win. If they go first and don't get Vileplume, you win. Like we saw the matchup play out in the finals of St. Louis Regionals, and that was expanded, so it's a little bit different. But I don't think the dynamics of the matchup really change at all between formats. It's just kind of like a shrug your shoulders and hope things go your way. But you're just big. The Rayquaza player, your Pokemon has so much HP, isn't too affected by item lock if you just draw well. Just draw the Pokemon and the energy. Which, I mean, that's easier said than done. But you just do so much damage so fast and can evolve immediately. You just overwhelm the Decidueye player pretty easily, I would think. And again, you have access to Hex and stuff like that to get out of item lock. I don't know. And again, the matchup, I think, is different. I guess for the most part, just without the Revitalizer Battle Compressor package, it's a lot harder for Grass Pokemon to find all their Evos really fast in Standard. You definitely could lose lots of games easily.
Yeah.
But
I think that's a good talk about Mega Rayquaza. But one more deck, I guess, before we end that I want to talk about as well is Mega Gardevoir. You touched on it a little bit when talking about Volcanion, but I think 2 or 3 players made top 32 in Australia with Mega Gardevoir, including Xander Perot, who's been playing the deck basically the entire year. Do you think Mega Gardevoir is a good play going forward? Or do you think the players who did well did well because they've just been playing it for so long and just know how to play the deck? I guess, Travis, you haven't talked in a bit. You want to talk about that?
I actually, there's one guy in Honor Roll, which is like a different team that me and some Pacific Northwest players have. There's one guy from Australia. His name's Kaiwing Kwan. He won TCG Worlds and Seniors in 2013, I think. Him and I, we talked about decks for Australia a lot, and we settled on Gardevoir for him to play for that event because I thought it would beat Decidueye Plume. I just thought that, you just can play a bunch of Hex and one-shot anything that's not a Decidueye, kind of like Rayquaza can. But I think, looking back on it, I think I kind of, underestimated what turn 1 item lock can do to you, because I actually lost in the finals of my Standard League Cup with Gardevoir to Plumel, and it was just kind of because the 2 games that my opponent went first, he just got turn 1 Bioplume, and I just kind of lost really fast because I had a really good hand, but they were all items and I couldn't do anything, and I was like, oh well, you can just play 2 or 3 Hex and it's fine, but I don't know. It's still weird because of all the items you have in your deck. If they get that quick Bioplume, it's really hard to respond to. So I think that I thought that Mega Gardevoir was pretty good against Decidueye Plume, and I think I may have been wrong. I think Rayquaza is just a better Skyfield deck at the moment. Because Gardevoir kind of shines when people are playing to beat Ray, right? Gardevoir is the Skyfield deck that beats everything but other Skyfield decks. So I think that if you wanted to play a deck like that, Rayquaza would have been better for Melbourne.
Okay, that makes sense. I like have favored Gardevoir quite a bit this season, but I don't think it's in a good place in the metagame right now. I don't know. It's like it has good matchups and okay matchups. I don't think it really has any great matchups as long as Mega Mewtwo isn't like in the forefront of the metagame. I think like your Evitil guard matchup, if that deck exists, is even to slightly unfavorable, depending on I guess kind of more or less if they just open with Fright Knight or not. Um, and then Turbo Dark is good. I don't know. Turbo Dark is like good, but not like super positive. I played Turbo Dark for a League Cup, like right after it won the Georgia regionals, and I was able to beat a Gardevoir like somewhat easily in Swiss. Like, against Mega decks, sometimes you just have to hope that things go your way. They have to hit so much, and you have to hit so little, like as the Dark player. So just like a couple things, like oh no, they had to Sycamore Mega this turn, and they had to get rid of a Spirit Link, stuff like that. If these little things just slowly go your way, it amounts to a lot, like at the end of the day. But that's just like a problem with Megas in general, and sort of why I think they're just like totally on their way out compared to GX Pokemon, because GX Pokemon just evolve, especially the grass ones like Lurantis and Decidueye are just so good because of how good Forest of Giant Plants is. But yeah, I guess that's just our 2 cents on standard for this week. Next week, be looking forward to we'll be shifting our focus to expanded once again to try to prep for Portland regionals. I believe that's the next big American tournament. I think there's something in Europe over this weekend, but I'm not confident. I would guess it's standard. Europe doesn't seem to play expanded at all.
Yeah, it's in Malmo. I don't know where Malmo is, but it's a standard regional. So
I wish we could say the same. I'm never very excited to have to play expanded. But yeah, Portland. I know Travis is going. I don't think Eric and I are going.
I'll be at Puerto Rico instead.
It'll be another expanded tournament, so we'll just get to see, how that metagame will look like after St. Louis. But I think that's all we have for today. So thanks for watching. Make sure to tune into some of our streams later on this week. We'll be posting up the dates and times for those on our Twitter and our Facebook page. And then just remember to like, comment, subscribe on our YouTube videos. And thank you so much. We appreciate all your support. See you next week.
Good luck this weekend if you're going to Malmo, guys. See ya.